Well, it's time for another edition of Raising Financially Fit Families with Joline Godfrey podcast. I'm your podcast producer, RJ Malik. Joline, always a pleasure to see you, and I'm looking forward to this podcast. So why don't you introduce your guest and then tell us what you'll be talking about on this edition of Raising Financially Fit Families.
Thanks, RJ. It's good to be back here. Well, today I am with Kit Hinrichs, who is one of America's top designers, but he is also one of the primary collectors of American flags in a multiple number of ways, which we're going to hear about here today. He is also the author of this new book just out, and I think you see it backwards there possibly, but we can see it says Broad Stripes, Bright Stars, and it is a graphic history of the 250th year of the American birthday. So we're excited to be here today. Kit, you know, probably better than most, that what I'm trying to do with Bounce is to give families ways to help their kids learn about collecting and to be able to take that in a lot of different ways. And I just want you to start with your show and tell story. And from there, we will go into the world of collecting and how it relates to families.
Well, one of the interesting things, certainly for me, I started when I was 7 or 8 years old, have show and tell at school. And under my mother's bed, there would be this wonderful little box that was filled with a flag that my great aunt had sewn in 1865 at the end of the Civil War. And so it's all handmade. It's a wonderful thing, 36 stars, which was representative of the state of Nevada. And it was just really at the end of the war. And so I used to take this thing, trot it out, hold it up at school, and all the kids would go ooh and ah, and then you put it back in the box and put it away. What I think is so important for what you're doing and your families is that collecting doesn't start when you're 50.
Right.
It starts when you're a child. And you can collect seashells on the beach, you collect stones when you're traveling, doing a little hiking in the mountains. The stuff just kind of happens. Every piece of mail that comes in the mailbox has something in it that not only represents a specific period of time, but also has geography in it. It has history of wherever you're doing these. It's just layered with all kinds of things that make collecting so much fun and entertaining, educational along the way. So it's great from that point of view.
So I'm curious, your parents didn't say, oh, keep doing more of that, Kit. Did it really come from you? Were you the one who kept going on it?
I've said to you before, I think that you're a collector, but also times collecting comes to you. You don't choose it.
Right.
And I was raised in the 50s. Things from the Second World War, all those things were very much part of patriotism, which was very rich at that particular time.
Right.
I'm the Eagle Scout. I'm the Marine Corps, the whole thing. And so I've been around a lot of the tactile aspects that there is in collecting, in seeing things. So when I had this flag, which I actually ended up framing and having it when I moved to New York in my early career, it kind of started things off that I would see flags everywhere for different things and in different mediums.
Right.
So that was a very important part of it, I thought. And it just doesn't stop. And as a designer, we're into branding.
Right.
It's kind of what we do. It's our profession. And so there's no more evident collectible and brand than the American flag.
That's true.
It's everywhere. Good or bad, love it or hate it, it's there and everyone recognizes it. And so you'll find it everywhere you look. And so my collection is very broad in what's included. In addition to traditional flags,
right,
I've got toys, I've got Navajo weavings, I have quilts, unbelievable quilts. And part of it, maybe as a designer, is the craftsmanship involved in creating those things. And I've always thought it really was the epitome of American spirit is in those objects, that these one-of-a-kind things that people did. It's just an amazing thing. And every time I find a new one, I'm like, whoa, look at the stories that are behind this. And there are stories every time.
Stories,
Yeah.
yes.
Sometimes the stories are from dealers who sometimes have a tendency to embellish the background of this object. It isn't just a flag. Of course, it was flown with George Washington when he was crossing the Delaware, which is probably not true.
Right.
And certainly not one that I could afford to have one if they had it.
Right.
But it is something that is, there are so many stories every time I buy something. And some things, of course, are given to me as well. But buying things is what you normally get. And many of the dealers who come to me, they are also collectors. So you get people who collect things, who build stories around these things. They pass those along. And all collectors everywhere are really custodians of those objects for a period of time.
Right. Well, the origin story of your great aunt was the story that got you started.
Absolutely.
And then as you grow older and wiser and stories have more meaning for you, clearly you can tell those stories now. But I think of families, I've said this to you before, that I get crazy on Antique Roadshow when somebody doesn't know the story of this thing they have brought. And I'm curious, who was it who told you about the story of the flag? How did that even come to you?
Well, of course, my mother knew this story, just like Antique Roadshow, passed down from generations. And her sister and my mother, of course, they kind of traded off with this, but somehow she got it and I got to take it on and become a part of that. But I look at the flag, which had multiple repairs in it. But there's something about even repairing a flag, which is a real endearment to the flag of what you're doing and putting it together. And so here's this wonderful 36-star flag that I have on my wall, and it is just a stunning piece. And it was the cornerstone of the collection.
And kind of germinated something you've done for your whole life now.
Yes, I mean, even though I've had this thing since I was in grade school, and I've probably collected some other flag things, but not as apparent as when I was a Boy Scout. And you collect merit badges, and you have all kinds of merit badges. And there's things that they link to the fabric of this country. And oftentimes it may include a flag in this process. There's all kinds of wonderful things that kind of come through this process of building your life and the objects that you remember and are touchstones for you.
Wow. So I think of some of the families I've talked with who will say things to me like, my kid collects these crazy things. I mean, was there a time when people thought you were a nut for collecting what you collected and how much you did of it?
Well, the nice thing is that my family was, hey, if you like it, collect it.
Wow, you were so lucky.
They were great. And I had the classic cigar box, and little things I'd put them in the box, and these would be important, memorable things for me to have. And they always brought back memories.
Yeah.
And even though I collect primarily Americana in some way or other, I also collect other things. I collect folk art of Mexican folk art, dozens of those animals around.
Right.
I collect typographic things from wood blocks to real pieces of type, and of course printed posters and so on that utilize type. As it's become an integral part of my collecting and my career, are wedged together.
Yeah.
Something. And because I'm also a collector, I can actually, or a specific kind of collector, I also, because I'm a designer, I can also take that into my professional life.
Right.
So I do books which incorporate the American flag. I do posters for events. So these things begin to kind of weave themselves into everything that I'm involved with.
And be a whole story.
Oh, absolutely.
Be a whole story. Yeah. It's interesting that you have had a life that it just kept growing organically around this. Um,
I've been lucky.
well, you've been lucky. I think you've also been lucky the people who have been around you who have, appreciated this part of you.
Yes.
And I think of that with kids I've known who, they collect a particular comic book, for example, and their parents think either that or there's this pile of rocks in the corner and what are they doing? And I think the acceptance of whatever it is you're collecting by the people around you offers some kind of respect on some level.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no doubt that there are so many things that as a kid, as all children, they find things that kind of are interested and they're excited about them. And you don't want to ever lose that excitement.
Right.
That is what really, that's what grows inside you and
Right.
makes you an individual, unique person. And sometimes collecting may define you from other kids, and people say, oh, you collect those things. And it becomes something that the kids own at that point. And that's an important thing I've found.
You said something to me the other day that you don't collect for investing. And that really struck me. I want you to talk about that a little bit, because I know there are kids today who go to these Comic-Con conferences
Right.
and they are there because they're trying to make some money.
Yes.
I've got this. And there's part of me that feels sad about that. It kind of drains the joy out somehow. And yet there they are making a ton of money somehow. But you don't collect for investing.
I don't. At the same time, I know that my collection has enhanced through the years,
Yeah.
partially because they're a limited supply.
Right.
So you can't just say, oh, well, I've just got 2 more of those or whatever. They don't exist.
Right.
But I think it's something that really is an emotional side of you as an individual, and it defines who you are. And that's an important thing. Really is. It's powerful.
Oh, for kids these days where social media is telling them who they are versus they're being able to see who they are, I think we need to bring this back in some very clear ways. And I know you have some things here we should look at. And I want to pull this one
You
up.
may. You may.
Because I can see a kid getting really excited about, this kind of a kick, they would
Right.
call it. I call it a sneaker. But it's cool and it's part of your collection. Where did you find this?
Oh.
And what's the story?
Oftentimes when I'm collecting, I don't have any edges to my collecting.
Okay.
There is no category. Oh, no, can't be that because it's not a traditional flag or a flag that is flown a certain place or anything like that.
Okay.
So that's part of it as well. So sometimes people give them to me. Sometimes I just see them in the store and go, all right, that's, there's a $19 pair of sneakers and then they got stars and stripes on them. So how can you not get those? So I'm very Catholic in the way in which I take all these things. Because it never is an edge to something. And oftentimes, as I've told you before, when you're collecting, as I do, as broadly as I do, I'm also, I'll say, competing with someone who only collects quilts, or someone who only collects Native American weavings, or someone who only collects belt buckles or toys or anything else. And so if you get another collector out there who wants what you want, there's a little bit of a war that goes on there. But it's as much the interest of the collecting is the collecting of it. It's not just having the object; it's the object.
The process.
The process of doing it. Absolutely.
Well, and I think about, we want to build resilience in kids and competition and being able to live with loss and all of those things.
Absolutely.
All are completely bound up in the process.
Well, I told you about that pin that I had seen at an antique fair in the East Coast. And I went in and, millions of things around. And I see this little star that's also a little game, and it's got red, white, and blue beads on it and so on. And when I talked to the guy, he says, Will Short was in here just a little while ago looking at that puzzle. And I thought, Will Short, you just lost your puzzle. So there is a certain aspect of that is not beating someone else, but the idea that you've collected something that's very special and also thought to be special by someone else who you understand and respect.
It's such a great builder of children and human beings, it seems to me. I hadn't, as a kid myself, I was not a collector in that way. I wish I had been. I think I would have known who I was earlier had I been able to do that, but it didn't work for me somehow. You do have a toy here.
Yes.
I want to see that.
Absolutely.
Because I think that's different from the sneakers or the
Yes.
kicks. You want to
turn it
Oh, yes.
so you can see it.
Okay.
This was meant to be mounted on a bicycle, probably in the early 20th century. And so you put flags in it, and when you drove it, of course, the flags fluttered along the way, and the airplane propeller turned as well. So it's just a little piece of it's a little toy, but it's something to do. But it engages you, it defines you within the bicycle that you have is different than the other kids, whatever. All that stuff is important to me. Individuality and who you are as a kid, and the tactile quality of all these things is just amazing. I mean, if we get a chance to take a look at the
violin.
I'd
Yes.
love to show you the violin.
Yes, actually, yes, Hannah, can you bring that over for us to see?
Yeah, it's great.
Thank
Now,
you.
as I say, that a lot of things go from Native American things in all kinds of ways. I happen to have seen a similar violin case that had been published in a book 40 years ago from the Thaw collection. And it's an amazing thing. And it's exactly this, not this exact same design, but close to it.
Okay.
And a completely different color palette. This is all blue. The other one was all white. And so, and in it are the words, the letters RB, Reuben Bass. And I don't think you can see this on the back, but I
Right.
have to turn it upside down to see it.
Right.
But this says Reuben Bass.
Elk Falls. Does it say February?
February
February
1891.
1891. And this is clearly deer hide.
Yes.
It's crazy.
It was covered in deer hide, and that's what the beading is done.
It's gorgeous.
It is a beautiful, beautiful piece. And I've been so fortunate to have it. And I get it at the Cowboy and Indian show in Albuquerque.
It's amazing. You know, when I think about how families are trying to get kids off screens,
Right.
which is one of the things, you know, I keep saying analog is the future. Analog is the future. Because we want kids to get out and feel the real world, and having kids immersed in collections and looking for things that are special is different from being on those screens.
Absolutely. And there's so many layers to collecting. It's not just the object, it's the history of the object. It's what was happening at the time that thing was created. So all of those, you learn so many different layers about things in whatever you collect.
Right.
And so I would encourage the kids to get involved and for the parents to encourage them in the process and to become part of it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of adults that collect stamps and coins and so on. And some of them do it for money or understand why they're doing it. But really, it's usually much more than that.
Right.
Even people who buy it as an investment, they usually kind of love the object
Right.
in some way. So,
Right. Right. No, that's exactly right. I'm desperate to get more kids collecting again, because I do think there is something that will take them out of that world of video screens all the time and give them a way to connect with one another. I think that's the other thing that I'm struck by when I listen to you. You do know you have a whole network of people in your life that some of us have never met, because that's a whole other world. And for kids who talk about being socially awkward because they just look on those phones,
Right.
this is a way to get in and be in touch with somebody who loves what you love.
Exactly. And also, of course, you learn every time you talk to another person. They've learned something along the way. They pass that along to you. So you have enriched your life just by what they have told you along the way.
Right.
And there's some truly historic things that I've also gotten, but that's not the only reason that people should collect anything. And it isn't only because it's historic.
Right.
You know, Pokemon cards are something that are out there, and they are a thing. And not only because they're collectible and they do have some value to them, there's a whole network of kids who do that stuff, and it's as important as what I may do with historical flags.
Well, we talk about fish at Bounce, and fish is financial, intellectual, social, and human capital. And I hadn't made this connection in a bit, but collecting helps you build both social capital and human capital and intellectual capital.
Absolutely.
It goes the full range, and
even
financial
financial
capital.
capital.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a great place to pull this thing to an end, because I know that RJ is going to interrupt me here in a moment, but I just want to talk about, there's one other thing that you have here.
There is, but if we could talk about the postal flag.
Oh, please.
The really, I think, important thing. Just in that all kinds of things come together in one subject.
Yes.
From the Second World War, there was a quartermaster, I'm not even sure where, but he was the guy who got the mail, distributed the mail, and he had decided to create a postal flag from stamps and postmarks from the 48 states at that particular point. Right. So he would ask people if they came from the capital of that state, please give me the envelope. I want to build it into my flag. So this thing has stars cut out of envelopes with the postal mark of the particular capital that was. And I had this on display in Kentucky, and there's a little kid comes up, and he's, I don't know, 8 or 9 years old, and he goes through all the states, and he goes, that's the wrong capital. I thought, what do you mean that's the wrong capital? He was in Kentucky, and it had Louisville as the capital, and that was not the capital of Kentucky. And so he learned something in there. He questioned something that he knew was incorrect, and I just love that, the whole story of that.
Talk about intellectual capital, really.
Absolutely.
It occurs to me, we are supposed to be celebrating the 250th year. And I think, what better way for families to give civics lessons than to do it through these kinds of vehicles? And there's no politics involved. There's no class or history lesson. It's just kind of the organic understanding of the life of a country through the various articles that are created for it. It's a very exciting moment.
It's great.
I'm now kind of envious of you as I look around here, and I think, there are I can't even believe what's over my shoulder that we're not going to talk about. Yeah. I'm particularly interested in the Cincinnati Weekly Times and that flag story.
That's at the end of the Civil War when that was done. And that's a civic thing done to the public, for the public, to celebrate the end of the war and show at that point there wasn't 48 states, but there were 36 states. And so each one had its own name, what the dates were that it was admitted to the Union. There's levels of things in just doing that. And I'm sure that there is some typography there that was carved specifically for that front page.
Wow.
It's just a knockout.
So I want to make sure that we mention, if anybody wants to go see more of these flags, you're going to have a collection show in
Reno, Nevada, at the Nevada Museum of Art, which is a wonderful modern museum. Beautiful. We've got a nice exhibition there that will open on November the 6th and go through till, I believe, March or April of the following year.
Whoa,
so it'll be up for a while. It'll start in November, as I think close to Election Day, actually.
Yeah. And
then it will continue on, and we'll have the opportunity to see a lot of these things in real life. And I hope you come.
I'm hoping to take the entire team there. I'm really excited about it.
You got it.
And for any of the families we work with, I'm hoping they'll bring kids with them, and we'll all see this in a big way.
That'd be great.
It'll be very exciting. This is fun. We may have to do a second show, because I know how many stories there are. And I know that there will be families who think, I have a story like that I could tell. And I hope they take this as a nudge to go do that. So thank you very much.
A real pleasure.
This is great.
Thank you.
RJ, this was another good one.
This was excellent, and I agree with you that you need to have him back for another podcast.
Yeah, it goes too fast.
Yes, it does. How about some contact information?
It's Kit at Studio Hinrichs, HINRICHS.com.
Excellent. And Joline?
You can contact me at Joline, JOLINE, at bounce-10.com.
All right, thank you, and looking forward to your next podcast. And thank you for listening to today's Raising Financially Fit Families with Joline Godfrey podcast. Please like, follow, and share this podcast with friends and family. If possible, rate this podcast and leave a review, because this actually helps others find the show. Until our next podcast, for Joline Godfrey, I'm RJ Malik.